So no matter once you log in, no matter if you're on your iPad or your computer, basically it just syncs between, so it allows you that freedom. This is the home page. So here, these are all a bunch of productions that I've got in here. Right? What we're going to do is create a new one. Okay, so feel free to do this if you have it there. You can follow along. So you do that. I'm going to add a new production. What should we call our new production?
SMA lecture.
SMA lecture. Here we go. Lecture. Okay. So now I have the opportunity to charts and score, or charts and script. Okay. So charts and score I haven't really dived into yet, but the score is what we call the staging score. Staging score is a really detailed way of writing out every step of choreography. So musicals, it's really useful to, on count 1, you step forward with your left foot, and then you turn in on count 2, you pirouette to the right. So when you're detailing choreography, you would usually use the staging score. Usually, as stage managers, we operate from the script, right? So I'm going to just do that first. So you choose charts and script, right? Then I'm going to add that. So now that's just adding it to my list here. Then you can go in and just write who wrote the book. Sondheim. Sondheim. Lyrics. Sondheim. Let's say it's everybody. Let's say Stroman. Oh, there she is. Then I could pick the logo. Let's see if I have a logo. Let's say it's that. Say that's the logo. Any picture, any JPEG, it'll just add, and that'll show to the bottom of any of your charts. And then you can choose the name. Let's say we're going into the Lyceum, and then choose your date. Let's say we're going to open tomorrow. Perfect. That was easy, right? So then you just enter that information. Then the next line down is stage dimensions. So I'm just going to go and enter my stage dimensions, okay? So I choose feet, I'm working in feet, or working in meters. So you can choose, here we're usually in feet. So let's say we're going to do, say, 38 feet wide. I'm talking proscenium. So from edge to edge of the wings, that proscenium opening is 38. Then let's say the depth is going to be 31 feet deep. That I calculate from the front edge of the stage to the back wall, or whatever you want to show, basically, right? Then offstage width. Let's say I'm going to show 9 feet of wing space on either side. And it could be anything you want, okay? So what's going to happen?
What if you have a theater that has this much space on one side and this much?
What I would
just
do,
add the two numbers together.
I would choose the greater one, and then say if stage right is the big one and stage left is the small one, it'll end there, but you'll have white space you can use. Yeah, I would use the big one. And so, in some cases, you might not want the whole backstage. You know, you kind of have to like figure out, what do I really need to see? If you're really tracking the backstage Tetris, then you want to see everything, right? Oftentimes, like when I'm doing a Bible for Stroman, I'll show just the first 5 or 6 feet, just so I can see people lined up in the wings. But the technical director is going to do the whole stage, so that they can do that car fits there, this bed fits there. And also the costume department on Broadway, Bullets Over Broadway, the costume team had charts of all the quick changes. They had basket number 1 and dresser number 1. And so they actually, they made the stage tiny and they made the wings huge so they could track, you know, where all the quick changes would go, so that they could do their tracking sheets that way. So you can sort of pick and choose how you want to do it. Let's say this is a traditional proscenium. So once I edit this little grid pops up, okay? So there's my, what did I say, 38 feet across, so out to 19, right? And then there's my 9 feet on either side, and there's my 31 feet there, okay? So now, I recommend that you use the full page. If I go back for a second, and I say, let's say the depth is only going to be 25. And now I look at the grid. See up here, there's this space that's not used. If it's not in the grid, it's going to be unusable space. So you won't be able to put text up there, you won't be able to put anything up there. So I recommend, even if that's your back wall, add space so that you can actually put stuff up there. You're going to want to, inevitably you're going to want stuff. It often happens that you'll have extra space on the side. I just say keep adding, so you can actually just have on your page white space to write text on, that kind of thing, right? So I'm gonna go back and just change that back to.
You could also put lines as where the walls are, just to demarcate on
Absolutely.
layer number 1.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so say we just did that. So there's my dimensions, and let's do, yeah, so here's our wall. Let's say that's gonna be our crossover. There. Right? So yeah, I can totally do that. And I can do, all right, so let's say there's this, in front of that is a little scrim. And maybe there's a lift downstage center. There's our elevator there. Oftentimes, I work on musicals, so forgive me if you're not a musical person, but I'll go, okay, the first Marley scene is there. And the second Marley scene is there. And the third Marley scene is there, right? And then let's make the legs. So here's the leg. Let's say it's kind of there-ish. And I'm just going to do copy, paste. And I go, okay, there's leg 2. Paste that one. Leg 3. Paste that one. Then let me do, I'm going to select all of them, copy that, paste that, and now I'm going to do those are my legs on the other side. Right, so now I've got say that's my very crude drawing, right? So let's say that's going to be it. Now if you want to label, one of the people I work with, he says, can you just write stage left down there? So when I'm looking at it, I just say the word stage right. So oftentimes you can just go, all right, let's label something. So we could call it scene 1. So you can just know that is scene 1 there. And I copy and paste that, and then this is, change that to scene 2. Right, so however you want to, do it. So you can draw it with all those drawing tools, and just to kind of talk through those tools that are there. There's squares, there's circles. So, and basically you just select something, and then if you see the red arrow, you just drag, using your finger, you just drag it. This table below, see my rotation, I guess rotating a circle is weird, but anyways, but you can, right, or back to 0. If I rotated my square, I can do that, right? So it allows you that opportunity. So whatever things you want to draw on here, and these will again be all of your permanent things that will stay on every single layer. And then once that's there, like you were saying before, if you wanted to change it, easy to change, you can always just go back and do that. Yeah?
Can you make the shapes to scale?
Yes, you can. Yeah. So let's talk about that next. So that's in the next thing, which is set pieces.
Oh, that's what you were talking about.
But let's do it. Yeah, let's do it together. So I can create. Let's say we're going to create maybe a palette that's going to slide in and out from stage right. So what I'm going to do is just using my shapes over here. I'm going to choose square, and let's say this palette's going to be 8 by 6. Let's say 8 by 8. Okay, so I drag. There's my palette. And then there's a bunch of set pieces that are just already in here, beds. So let's say this is a hospital. And now this is how I can choose the size. So these are our feet. So if I know this bed kind of comes in standard, but if you know this bed is ultra skinny because that's how we made it, and now it's 2 feet, let's say it's 2 feet wide, I'm going to squeeze it to 2 feet, and let's say it's 4 feet tall. Right, so you can just drag it to that. That's the munchkin bed, right? And then let's say it's going to live on a little angle. So that's that. And let's say maybe there's a little stool next to it. And maybe there's a curtain across the back. And maybe there's a doorway. And if obviously you can change the dimensions to be whatever it actually is. All right, so say that's my palette, right? It's a very weird design, but anyways, that's how I did it. I guess the bed should go over there if that's where the door is. All right, so that's my palette. So now I'm going to just give it a name and a size. So I select this up there, and I'm just going to call this the hospital. Okay, then you got to give it a dimension. Okay, the dimension is 8 by 8. right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to crop it at whatever the dimension is. If I say it's 2 by 4, it's going to just show me that part of that drawing. So you've drawn it to scale on this chart, and then you just say the size of that is anything that is between 8 and 8 is going to be saved. So there I'm going to save it. So there's my hospital. So now if I go back to one of my charts here, oh, I didn't create any scenes yet. Let's do a scene. Let's try scene 1. So if I go to my chart now, scene 1, it says no charts. See the plus sign at the top? Add blank chart. There it is. That's what I drew right on the permanent layer. And now I'm going to add my hospital. There it is. So now it acts as its own unit, and I can take that whole unit and rotate that, or take it back too. So you can actually drag that around. So that's how you do it in the dimension. So I usually recommend do everything in scale. That's one of the great things about Stage Right is it's all in scale. When we did Big Fish on Broadway, did anybody see Big Fish?
Yeah.
There were 3 giant staircases that were hidden in the deck, and we would bring out 1, we would bring out 2, we would bring out 3, and they did all kinds of tricks. We were in pre-production. We designed it. We were in pre-production a week before we went into rehearsal, and Stroman wanted this piece of choreography. The dancers would come out behind the staircase and dance around, and then come in up here and disappear before that staircase came down. And so because I was doing the pre-production and Stage Right, I was like, it's not going to fit. There's not enough. The stairs are too big to be able to do that thing you want to do. And she was like, well, let's call and see if they've built those stairs yet. Call up the shop. Have you built those stairs? No. Cut off one stair. We want it to be 2 feet shorter. We're going to do it 2 feet shorter. So before they built it, we were able to save all that money and save her choreography from, we would have had to change the choreography because we weren't going to rebuild the stairs. But luckily, they hadn't rebuilt the stairs. So because everything's in scale, it just allows you to be able to actually really figure it out and figure out how can it fit, how can that fit backstage, how can that go past that, and all those good things. Yeah. Yes?
Just out of curiosity, you said you could upload the ground plan to this.
Yeah.
If the ground plan has the set pieces already on it, as well as the actual set, is that possible as well?
It's possible. Yeah, you can do it. Let's do that next so you can see. I recommend not doing that. What I recommend, because you want to be able to move stuff around that moves. You'll get the scene by scene from the scenic designer. What I usually do when I get that from them is I erase all the stuff that's going to move. And I crop like that cannon. I crop that out as its own little individual image so that cannon I could show the traffic going on and off stage. But on his ground plan, of course, it was permanent. So what I normally do is I'll take one of them, the cleanest one, and erase like the lines where the lights are, because the actors don't care about that, right? Whatever you need or don't need on that chart, just make it a clean one. So, and then what you would do is you would upload that to the permanent layer. Let's actually do that. So if I go back to my permanent layer, we did this beautiful design, but let's say I'm just going to delete it now. So I delete that. Because say we have the ground plan. Alright, so I'm going to delete those things. And then I'm going to basically take the designer's ground plan and I'm going to upload it. So see that second to last button. Now, what I do is I just select that image from my iPad. Let's see, I'm sure I have a ground plan here somewhere. Here's one. So let's say that is our stage. And let's say, what's going to do, it's going to automatically assume that you want just the onstage space, but that's actually not right. You're going to give this, what's the dimension of this whole image? So that is 38 feet. You got to add this offstage space. So just it's probably on the ground plan. So you just got to know, I'm saving the dimension of this actual unit. Let's say it's 60 because by the time I add the 9 feet on either side, and let's say it's 35 feet deep. And I save that. So now there's that script, what's that called? Stage. There as its image. And I can just drag, you can kind of see where the center line goes, and drag it. And I can decide, actually, I'm going to take it right to the front edge, because I want to see that. Right? So that's how you do that. So I recommend, in this, we're assuming that these legs are permanent. They don't ever move because that's on the image. If those are mobile during the show, don't include it on the permanent layer. Include that as its own set piece and drag those in and out that way. Does that make sense?
So your
Yeah.
offstage space, if it's 9 foot, starts at the front of it, at the front of the.
Yeah,
light?
what's happening, your offstage space starts where the number line ends. So when I set it up, I said this was 38 feet deep, right? I didn't do my math right on this one, but, so
Right.
ideally this would line up right with that,
Mhm.
right? I'm just sort of guessing on this one. So you would say that's my 9 feet, so you want to actually make sure that that was 38 plus that. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you just have to do the quick math of what's the real dimension of this image that I'm putting on this page.
And I know, you said there's a separate section in which to put the wing space, correct?
Yeah, the wing space goes, let me go back for a second. The wing space is when you're setting it up here, is here. So off stage width. So I did my proscenium 38, depth 31, off stage on either side 9. So now in this case, that picture that I just uploaded, that was actually more than 9 feet. So it was probably more like 12 or something. So you would go back and change that. Does that make sense? Now once you have added stuff into your production, like I've added that set piece and I created the hospital palette, once you've saved something in a dimension, it freezes the production at that dimension. That doesn't mean you can't change it, okay? Like say that's what we were looking at, and it's like, oh, it's actually, I want to see more of the stage. Like I want to see the top of that thing. What you can do is you're going to make a copy of this production and basically save it as a larger dimension. Does that make sense? So what I would do is in this production, I would go back here and I would use this copy production button. So I hit copy production, and then let's say this is going to be SMA, we'll call it number 2. This is version 2. And then it gives me the option, these are the ones that I used before, but I'm going to change those. Instead of 38, let's say I'm going to choose 43. Instead of 31 deep, I'm going to choose 37 deep. Off stage, maybe it's 12. I'm just kind of guessing. And then I make a copy. And what it does, it makes a total copy of your production. So if you have done work, if you've added, pathways, you don't have to start over. But what it's going to do is now it saves it at this new dimension. So I'll go out of here and I'll open up the new production. SMA2, let's see if I can find it here.
If you have plans to not have to copy production, you should be able to just tweak the dimensions in the original settings.
Yes, that's something that we're working on. But yes, but once you've saved something at a dimension, it freezes it in that screen size. Yeah, but yes, that's something we could do.
And one of the helpful things with it is, in case someone accidentally switches the number, then it would, for example, if you're going from a larger stage to a smaller stage, it's going to bring those actors that were out and bring them
At
in.
the bottom.
So we just kind of
There.
didn't want people to get confused by accidentally
SW.
switching it and being like, oh, I want to go back, but not being able to go back.
Oh yeah, that's the first one. Where's the other one? SMA2. Where'd it go? It's here somewhere.
Shouldn't it have duplicated with the logo as well?
Yeah, it would have, but I think I went fast past it. Did I? Oh. Where did it go? Okay, I went too fast. Ah! Oh, please. Did I name it the right thing? I think so. Oh, that's the first one.
It's not there.
Where'd it go? Did I save it wrong title? Hold on, let me see here. Okay, hold on, try it. I don't pay attention when I'm doing. Copy SMA2 script. Let's see, what did I say? 45, 37, 12. Okay, SMA2. Track here. Oh, maybe because I'm on 9. Hold on, maybe that's why. Well, I'll let that run for a second, but essentially that's what, it would save all the stuff that you've done, and it would add that extra space so you could actually drag the top of that. Let's see if it's going online. What other questions are out there? I'm waiting for those. I don't know if I ever did that. Any other questions out there? Let's see. Did we cut through?
No.
Crazy. Am I missing a time? Perfect. You did hit the same button for sure. I think I did. Back button.
Do you have to
Oh, maybe I hit
copy it when you're online?
No, I don't think so. It should. Anyways, I'm sorry, it's not working, but it should work. You want to see the environment? What other questions do you guys have out there? Anybody used it yet in your? You have used it. Well, what challenges have you found that you wanted to ask about?
I think I didn't have any major issues with it. I think it's just like things that could make it slightly easier.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're working on
Yeah, this being
your
one.
computer versus on the iPad.
Yeah.
Just, minor things like, you highlight the text where you want to put a like cue in, so add a keyboard shortcut so you can not have to
Yes,
constantly
yes,
go back
thank
and
you.
forth, or
Yeah.
allow selecting default font sizes and colors, because
Yes, that's something
the
we're
font
doing.
size is extremely small.
Yeah.
So if you want to change it, you have to do it for every time.
Yes. Yep, that's something we're doing.
Things like,
Yeah.
if you add a text box, choose whether you want it to have a border or not.
Yeah, what's your default?
All that kind of
Yep,
stuff.
Yep, that's something we're doing.
When you then export it as a PDF, it shrinks it to make the margin on the left side for like the 3-hole punch.
Yes.
Sometimes it shrinks your text, but it does not shrink like if you put a like cue in, it doesn't shrink the box accordingly. So
Oh.
then it's like
Oh.
off center, or it tweaks it a little bit.
It should. If you have
I
uploaded
have
the
things
fonts,
like I have.
yeah.
Mhm,
If you uploaded the fonts to your web, which you have done,
mhm.
it should be exactly the same.
Mhm.
But you've seen it being around it.
I mean, it's not like major, but
Yeah.
it's particularly when, like
Yeah.
one I did recently, I had a lot of counts. Like I
Yes.
put in a text box with the counts of the
With all the
music,
counts,
and
yeah.
then, highlighting
Yeah.
the like cue.
Yeah.
That was really
And
small.
it didn't shrink everything.
And then if you choose to print a PDF, say just the script, like you just want the calling script, not the charts. If you want to do a double-sided,
Yeah.
what would be the like cues on the right-hand side of the page can
Yeah.
get cut off by the 3-hole punch. So just it's
good.
like just minor things
Good
like
point.
that.
Oh, okay,
are,
good. Thank you. Yeah.
just the real life
Okay, we can tweak that.
examples.
Yeah. Oh,
Other
thank
than
you.
that, I mean,
That's good.
really.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful.
And when you're creating charts, like to not have to close the actor layer to type in the cue line.
Yes.
It's like you're constantly going back
Yeah,
and
going
forth.
back and forth. Yes. Yes. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's good. Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate that. Yeah, please keep those coming. And once we finally got our collaboration working, now we're diving into that list of things.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. What other questions do you guys have out there? Yeah.
Just in your experience, I know you said that you can correlate charts to sections of the script
Yeah.
where something happens.
Yeah.
But also, where would the written blocking go?
Yeah. Where does it
as
go?
well?
Yeah. Let's look at it. Oh. Did you ever find it?
No, I was seeing if there's.
Okay. So yeah, let's look at it. Here's how I tend to do it. Let's see, go back to in script. Here's what I tend to do. Get to let me go on this one. So what I would tend to do on my script, I would put the lighting cues on the right side, and I would put any actions on the left side. So if it's like, say, connected to that section, if I go to the left and I write, she picks up the tambourine, right? So, and then you can size it accordingly. You can move it up or down. But if you attach it to that word, you don't have to. You can make it attached to that whole paragraph. you want it to go, essentially, right? So it allows you that ability to move. So you could put it that way. If you don't want the outline around it, you can just do a text box. So in whatever white space you want, let's say here in this area, I would just write, she picks up the tambourine and slams it down. Yeah. Or this tambourine. Right? So you can just have it as a text box there. So essentially, where in whatever white space you have, to be able to let it, to let it go wherever you want it to be. So that's a possibility. The other thing that I tend to do when I'm in rehearsals, I tend to write that stuff on the actual chart itself, because eventually you're going to link it to the script anyway. So I tend to write a lot of notes and stuff on this page. Oh, I'm going to flip this back to the other point of view. So that as you're flipping back and forth, you can just have, let's see if I can find some of those. Like, all right. Let's see. Like there you can see upstage on the 5th step, downstage on the 4th step, down, there's a little note there. So here's the big one. So Kristen's holding on count 2, moving on count 4, her butt's on 3, feet on 1, 3, so I tend to write the details on this page, but you can do it either way that you want, however you prefer. I tend to, when we're actually in rehearsal, I tend to just have my the real script here, and then on the back of it I have the iPad sitting there and I'm grabbing the choreography kind of as it goes. But you can kind of do it however you want. How do you tend to do it, as you've been doing it?
I have tended to mostly just take handwritten notes in rehearsal and then
and then later go back,
But I have tried to, I want to get faster at doing it on the iPad, but you're sort of going back and forth because you can't have the script and the chart kind of at the same time. So your script is over here, your iPad's over here, and that's where some of the wanting to quickly jot down like a cue line or that kind of thing rather than having to click.
Yeah, that's what time is for. Yeah. Okay.
And when you're linking charts to the script, the thumbnails are so small that
it's
you
hard to
can't,
see.
like, for example, this page has 6 charts on it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was hard to
see which one is the
because you can't
best chart.
expand it for a preview.
Yeah, that's something we're working on.
And then it would be great if the chart number could be then inserted in one of the margins on the script.
On the script, yes.
Because when you have it on the screen, you highlight it, you see exactly what it is, and you might have a cue line, but then if you have just one chart on the page, you don't know exactly where.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's true. Let me switch over to, I'm sorry, yes.
So like the way that like blocking scripts end up, being in like practicality use is like you have like a number over here, like number 1, Shiva moves stage right, 7 counts, blah, blah, blah. And then that references over on this side of the page, like that. So if you wanted that to happen in this scenario, is that possible, or do you just have to pull a chart so it pulls a chart in, and then you have to write on the chart, which is...
Yeah, it's sort of intended that these charts replace that description. So
Gotcha.
Instead of doing your, all the lines that say all the things, that you would actually it would happen on here, so you would see she actually goes over to stage left 7. And if she grabs the prop on the way, you would add a little text note there, and then you link that chart to that section of the script, so then you would just flip back and forth.
Right. I
Between
guess
the two.
the reason that you end up doing that, which is the reference number over here on this side, is because like in musicals, especially larger musicals, your calling script is so full of sound and light and everything, other cues. The blocking script, unless you do it as a separate whole document, which you do in many cases, but unless you do, you just want something small reference over here to reference.
Yeah, I suppose you could go, you could do, like you say, you could actually have the number 1 on your script and then link that chart to that section. You could do that way.
Right.
You find it here. But yeah, that's a good point. You could absolutely do that. So if you were here, say here's your script. What you're suggesting, I think, if I understand, is like to have, I'll add, I'll go down here, say down here, go down there. Script. I just wanted to add a text box here and add just the number 1, right? Then you would link that number 1 to that chart. You could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You could do that.
I suppose.
Because that's what you do, right? You just
Right.
say the number 1 attaches to that section of the script, right?
Right.
That's what it would normally do. And then number 1 is listed over here. Yeah. So,
I mean, in a dream world, like if you were thinking about what would be really practical in sort of a rehearsal sort of sense, is if you had the script and you could just like click on the script and it would pull up a text box and you just type in that text box and then it shoves it over to the other side of the page.
You mean like this one?
Yeah, like if you had,
Yeah.
right.
So if I go, okay, I'm going to add
So that it shoves it
action.
to the other page.
Oh, to the other page.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So
So-
you don't use charts. You're just going to use only.
In plays, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
you know, creating charts is sometimes okay if you have a lot of people like in a play, but
Yeah.
if you're just doing a play for like, you know, five or six people,
So you wouldn't track their blocking. What
not
visually?
necessarily.
I see.
But, I mean, you could.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think what I tend to do is I have handwrite, and then if something needs a chart, or if there's a reason for the chart, or there's a lot going on, and I want to see it visually instead of reading it out. Because what I'll find in rehearsal that gets asked of me, especially with straight plays, is, what does she do on that line again? And I don't want to have to look at the chart and interpret what I drew. I want to be able to read, she crosses stage left and sits down. But then if it's
Okay,
like
interesting.
15 people on stage and you want a bigger musical
I
and
see.
it is about the choreography, then you
Oh.
want a chart.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, because in my world it'd be like he goes over stage left, and I would just go sits in. chair.
Right. It's also just like how your brain
Yeah.
thinks of it.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that's something we could look at doing. So you would choose. I'm not doing any charts for this production. I'm going to only write stuff down.
Like I've done it where I just draw one text box for the entire left margin.
Sure.
And just
Yeah.
type and hit enter until I want it to line up
Right,
where it is.
right.
Because that was sort of when I said earlier, like having
Yeah.
settings where you can choose whether the order is there.
Uh-huh.
Because I like the highlighting and sending the
Right.
action over there,
Yeah.
but if everything has boxes around words and everything,
Right,
the
right.
page just
Yeah.
can get really noisy.
Right, so you
Yeah,
would
that's
just,
helpful.
you would type someplace into the script and it would like open up a text box and you just type it.
Yeah.
And then once you push enter, it puts a number 1 there. And then on the
Right.
other side of the
Takes you
page,
over
it says
there.
1, Jimmy
And
sits in
that's all the
chair.
detail. Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Put that on our wish list. That's cool. Okay, good. Let me show you quickly too, just the staging score. Does anybody do musicals here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just show you the staging score so you get the sense of what that is. So the staging score is essentially let's see if I get a good example here. So what it is, let's see. Yeah, here we go. So essentially, under the gray is the counts. 1 yen, 2 yen, 3 yen, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 counts. Right? Up above, on count 1, Juliet sings, don't leave me. Right? That's her. And Romeo says, hey, Juliet, I wish that I were a glove. Right? That's all according to the counts. Then Josephine, every person has basically 3 layers, and you can customize. I want them to have only 1 layer. What's the step she's doing? What's the active foot she's on? And what are the details? So on count 1, she walks down stage. She steps, her right foot crosses in front of the left foot. On count 2, steps left. On 3, step, ball change, step, step. And those are the feet, right, left, right. Here, the details, he moves down stage to the first seam of the floor where this SFX is located, holding a basket. His arms are in open second position. The basket is left hand palms up. That all corresponds with count 3, right? So there's just and then at the same time Josephine's doing that, Juliet is doing this stuff. So you can actually just go through in detail exactly what each person is doing at any moment in the play. So there's of course the music version. Here's the play version where there's no time signature. This is just time passing. Romeo says, hello there, how are you? Juliet, I'm fine, thanks, I missed you last night. Romeo, I missed you too, what shall we do today? That's what's being heard, right? And then at the same time, while Romeo says that, he's drinking coffee, spills a little on this, it's okay, there's nothing in the cup, director's note, the actor pours water, right, whatever. And then Juliet does these things here, right? So it all, basically, the idea is sort of like a conductor can see what the oboe is playing on count 4. This just allows you to, at a glance, see what all the actors are doing.
And
So,
then-
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, what
That's
heading is this type of chart under?
This is called staging score. So when you're choosing what you want to use for your production, you can choose either import the PDF of your script, which we've been talking about up till now, or doing this version, which is much more detailed, that allows you to get down and dirty about all the details. Yeah, so you can do it. That's just the dialogue version. Then there's the musical. There's 8 counts. There's 10 counts. There's triplets, all that good stuff. So that just allows you to go in and enter stuff. So there you can see here's another one. Just allows you to just really easily, document all the choreography. And essentially, let me go down to one that's less. This has nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an 8 count. And what you do is you choose which actor does this involve. Let's say it's Brad, and let's say it's Katie. Okay, so that's going to add this little staff there. So there's my 8 counts, and then you just go in and essentially type. So I basically go Brad. Let's say steps down stage, right, and then he does it on his right foot, and then whatever details, let's say in details, he steps up to her and kisses her forehead, right? So, what did it say? Forehand. So that just types normally, but I say it only applies to count 1, and I can just take that, drag it, so it only corresponds to, that all happens on count 1. So you can get as detailed as you want, right? And then on count 2, he's going to step on his left foot, right? This is much faster to do on the computer for sure. But that just allows you to be really, really detailed about all those things. So that's what we call the staging score. And then similar to the other one, you can actually link these together. So if I go and I want to see my charts and score together, so I've got these, that chart is going to correspond to that staff. This chart's going to correspond to that staff, right? So on and so forth. So then here you can see, actually, as you were asking about before, it actually does do the chart 1.2, which is something we are doing on the script eventually. So you'll have that option. But then this allows you, once they're all linked together, if I go, if I say I'm looking at my charts, or let's say I'm looking at the score, for example. So if I'm here, and I'm just reading along, and I'm here and I go, oh, I want to see what happens at chart 1.2. If I click that, that takes me over to that chart immediately, right? Or vice versa, if I hit this little link button, that takes me back to that page in the score. So I can just kind of flip back and forth. And that's something that we're doing with the script soon. So you'll be able to flip back and forth much more quickly. So that's there. So that's what we call the staging score, just intended to be like a conductor score, sees all those people at the same time. What else? What other questions are out there? Yeah.
Oh, so when you download your either the stage or the script, what formats are supported?
PDF, so you can import any PDF to import. Any pictures that you're importing, like the logo or the ground plan, it's got to be a JPEG. So anything you're importing into the charts themselves need to be JPEGs. If it's a script, it's going to be a PDF. Yeah, so those 2 files. Yeah. So say you get like a PDF of your ground plan. What I normally do is I go in and I erase all the lines I don't want in Photoshop or something, and then I just save it as a JPEG on my iPad or my computer, and then I upload it that way.
So it's better to have a JPEG for that, for this
For the
stage.
charts, yeah, that's a JPEG, yeah, but for the script is PDF.
So then if you get a script page change in your PDF,
Uh-huh.
you have to just have one page to insert there? How do you do that
So yeah,
insertion?
let's see, I can't do it on I can do it on my computer. Let me explain it to you. What you do is, so you have your PDF, I'll show you where it goes. Where's my script? Basically what you do is, I won't show it here, but there's a button on the web, so if you're on your computer, you just say you're on this page and you want to replace this page. There's a choice that says replace current page, so the page that you're on, and if you you select it from your desktop, this page replaces that page. So it basically wipes away the PDF layer but leaves your notes where they are, so you don't have to replace
And you
it.
just move your notes around.
So you may have to jog your notes. Yeah. And if you want to add, like say, you were talking about adding a bunch of counts for a musical. If you want to add another page of just those counts, you can insert a new page, a new PDF page, so that then it's not necessarily a text box, but it's actually a PDF of those counts, and then you could put on top of that your counts. So you could actually insert a new page in between the two. So that you would do on your computer. That you can't do it on the iPad, but all those things you can do on your computer. Yeah, and you can replace the entire script. You can replace, just the current page you're on, or insert a new page, or delete a page. Yeah, those are all done with PDFs. Yeah.
If you were to insert just one new page, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's grab my computer. I'll show you here. Can I plug this into the HDMI? So it shows. It'll just show you. Thank you. Let me pull it up here. Well, let's say I'm not on the Wi-Fi. Is that easy to find?
Yes. It's Sheen Center.
I have an example here.
Oh yeah.
I have
Yeah.
a script.
Oh yeah. You want to just show them? Oh yeah.
But
Thanks.
I think it's the little icon with the, looks like a,
Yeah, it's it's that. It just won't.
Oh, you don't-
It looks like this, but you can't do it on the iPad. That's what I'm going to show you.
you can import this script, replace current page, insert script pages, or delete current page.
Yeah. Sheen Center. Oh, there it is. UEFS. So, is that done? Let's see. So if I go to so if I go to so let's say, where am I at? Okay, so I'm in my script here. So say I'm on this page, and I go here, then I can import a whole new script. I can replace the current page, insert a script page, or delete this current page. So let's say I'm gonna replace this page, number 1 that I'm on. So I go here and I say yes. And I would just choose a new PDF, let's see, something from my desktop. So then essentially you would just choose that, and it will just replace that page with the new thing.
Does it have to be the PDF that you're replacing has to be one single page? Or
It could
you
be
have a brand new
multiples.
copy
Yeah,
of
it could,
this?
if you have 5 pages, it'll just insert the 5 pages, yeah, into the spot. Like it'll replace the first one, and it will add 4 new pages.
So if the author gives you a brand new script that has all 100 pages, you need to export the one single page that you actually need before you can.
Yes, if you want to do that, yeah, you could do it that way, yeah, say it's like page 1 and page 5 and page 7, you're going to want to do them individually, yeah, that's right, yeah. So then now I've imported this invoice into the middle of our script there, yeah. So that's how you do it, yeah, but it's pretty simple, yeah.
So, do you have the ability to print that into like a hard copy so that you have
Yeah,
it?
yeah, so if I go, so now I go to print, I can print just the script itself, I can print just the charts itself, or I can print the charts and script, so the charts and the scripts either side by side. And what it will do is it will create a PDF of that, which then you can tell it to print double-sided or single-sided, whatever you want it to be. But it basically creates a PDF for you to then print that.
So when you're working, you're actually just working on the cloud, basically.
That's correct, yeah.
Until you make a PDF and then it goes to.
That's correct, yeah, then you'll save a PDF to your computer, yeah, then you print it how you want. And now I'm supposed to end here because John's ready to go. Any other questions before I?
I was just wondering if you had any opera companies use this.
Yeah, the Metropolitan Opera's using it.
Cool,
Yeah.
and then do they just use this, I mean, I guess.
They actually use the
either.
score, so they import a PDF of the score.
Right, but like under the script option.
In the script option.
Right,
Yeah,
because
so-
I was thinking, okay,
yeah.
yeah, if you're typically.
Yeah, so they actually do, I think I have one here. Yeah, any PDF you can do. In fact, MTI, we have a partnership with MTI, and all their materials come, you get the script followed by the score, but it's all in the script. Yeah.
Gotcha, okay, cool.
I have, if you want to look at the end, I have an example of an opera too.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe like, even using some of those like box options,
Uh-huh,
because opera is often so
Yeah.
much less standard with your comic scripts.
yeah.
So I was like, oh, there's some neat ideas to.
Yeah, that's what
cool
they
comic
tend to do.
scripts.
They just do text boxes like under
Yeah.
that measure. She sits on the poof and she crosses stage left. And I know it's fast and furious. So yeah, so I know they're using it at the Met now.
Cool.
Yeah, and New York City Ballet is using it. It's being used. I think our last count was 80 Broadway shows. I think we have 60,000 users worldwide. Cirque du Soleil is using it. So it's sort of becoming the standard. A lot of stage management courses and all that stuff in it. So as you're using it, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you for these suggestions. We want it to be as user-friendly and useful to you as possible. So don't ever hesitate to just drop an email and say, "Can't you do this?" Like this would be. I love seeing how it's useful for other people because I only know what I know and what I use. So it's helpful to hear. So thank you so much for that. Thanks for letting us take a little bit of time tonight.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Good. So we'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Of course. My pleasure.
Let's take 5 here while we reset.
Grab this. No, I just need the first. No, my pleasure. I'm gonna sit in the back and watch. Shoflo. Oh, yeah, well, just, yeah. If anybody needs just the info, you know it already. Though. Yeah. Of course. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Uh-huh.
be a good kind of time to get some. First off, thanks for letting us join. I'm John with Shoflo. We're actually based in Orlando, Florida, so it's come up here in the cold. My buddy that lives here actually said, he's like, you brought the Florida warmth. Today was, I guess, one of the warmer days you guys have had in a while. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the highest level, really, I'm not sure. Has anybody heard of Shoflo before? I guess before this. Yeah, a couple of you. Okay. So Shoflo, kind of highest of levels, is a cloud-based software for creating rundowns, cue sheets, production schedules, those types of things, primarily for corporate events, or the corporate event space. We also serve a few other different markets. Corporate events is one of our primary kind of industries. Also the sporting industry. So that's actually, funny thing about that, is the sports industry kind of found us. We really started working in the corporate event space for conferences, trade shows, those types of stuff. But surprisingly enough, sporting events require a very similar looking document they call game scripts. And again, when I'm talking about document, I'm referring to a rundown, which is kind of your traditional grid layout. You've got your items, you've got your different department columns, with audio, video, lighting, those types of things. And so sporting industry was just kind of another one that found us. And so we're actually used in about 300 different sports teams globally. That ranges from high school football to New England Patriots, LA Rams, all in their stadiums and their control rooms and things like that. So when Mandy kind of reached out for me to present, I know a lot of you guys are in more the theatrical side, but I just want to kind of share a tool that you guys might run into. If you ever freelance or anything like that on events, you might get invited into something like that. And so I just want to kind of share how some other industries are kind of using these kind of classic rundowns and stuff like that for if you guys ever do either make a transition, maybe in sports, maybe in corporate, or want to make some extra money on some freelance gigs. Just kind of share some of that stuff. So I'll just kind of jump. I like the way that you guys did it, which is kind of jump right in and click around. It's a nice kind of small environment. So what I thought I would do is just kind of jump in. You guys also should have gotten a link. We also have a free trial. Ours is not a month, it's 7 days. But definitely, if you guys want to continue playing with it after a week, I'll leave my email. Shoot me a note. Happy to extend that for you guys to keep kind of playing around with it. So I'm just going to kind of jump in. Let me make sure you guys can see this already. I'm a little cut off, but whatever. So highest levels, most of our customer base are production companies, corporate production companies. We also have end-to-end clients that are customers and actually invite in either hired production companies or freelancers that they bring on for their events. So this is kind of potentially what it could look like as a company. We do have freelance stage managers that are customers and have their own account. We actually have a special kind of freelance stage manager license because we understand a lot of you all use it on a lot of events, and it's great marketing for us to get into other productions and events and things like that. So this is kind of just what we call this the team dashboard page. So this could say the LA Rams. This could say John Smith's freelance company, whatever. This is kind of what the team page is, and this is where you create your events, your projects. I've got an example event already created in here. You can see you can upload your own company logo. It's a little bit small. And so I've got just an example event right here. Inside of, once I click on the event, think of this, we refer to this as the event dashboard page. You can kind of think of this as your digital show book. This is where you can create a few different documents in Shoflo. You can also upload any external files, things like PDFs, keynotes, which are obviously PowerPoint files and those types of things that often get tossed around in emails from talent or from an end client or something like that. So as far as the things you can create in here, if I click this plus button in the top or the right hand side right here, you're going to see we ask kind of what do you want to create, and we have 3 different kind of documents that you can create into Shoflo. It's a show, a schedule, and a list. A show is your standard, and I'm going to jump in and show you examples of each one of these. A show is your standard rundown. You've got your grid system, your layout, your timing components, all that type of stuff. Your schedule is a little bit more of a simplified view for things like a production schedule, rehearsal schedule. These are all things that you're likely, if you're creating these things already, probably in Excel. So what you're kind of going to be seeing is an alternative way to build and collaborate with these types of things in here. So schedule is another option, and then list is really an even more high level, just simple things. I know a lot of our customers use it for crew contact information, throwing your crew info, even managing presenters, presenter info. Could be flight details, could be contact information, roles, those types of things that often get distributed and can sometimes change throughout the life cycle of a standard kind of corporate event. We also have baked in here a lot of templates, so you can start from a fresh, just blank, empty kind of rundown, or you can use some of our preloaded templates, or as a company you can also create and save your own templates. So if you have a certain type of client or certain type of events that you constantly do, you can create a very simplified like event template and create off of that every single time. So if you have a standard way you like to lay stuff out, maybe a similar crew for each type of thing, being able to quickly use those templates company-wide can be really effective. And even for large corporate production companies, if you have a lot of producers, a lot of crew that are creating things for other talent, or other customers for other events, it's good to have an approach to where everyone's creating them in a very similar structure and format. Because Excel, as we all know, is great for a lot of things, but if you're creating rundowns and you've got a team of 10 producers creating their own different rundowns, they can look very differently. And if you've got a lot of people that jump on and off, it can be tough to read and kind of better understand. So just kind of a little bit in there. So I'm just going to jump into an example. Well, let's start with a blank show. I think this is a kind of simple way to show it. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit as well. So this is what our just empty show looks like. And so, obviously this hopefully looks pretty familiar if anybody's used to looking at rundowns. I'm just going to move left to right and talk about some of the features and how this is typically structured. On the left-hand side, you're going to see we've got item numbers. You can start those from any number. They auto-calculate, so as you input new elements or rearrange things, it's always going to be counting down, or counting up, I'm sorry. So you can start that from 0, -1, 100. For multi-day events, oftentimes people do 100, 200 for day 2, and those types of things to kind of help structure it. You can also do decimals and alphanumerics if you like to structure it that way as well. You can disable that if you don't like to do it, or I know some big corporate events like to, if they've got fixed numbers based on certain cues and things like that, so they have kind of hard, they don't like to kind of auto-calculate. So to the right of that is we call this the items column. This is your kind of element name, your action item, what if it's Jeff Smith's keynote, that's where you're gonna input that right here. If this is doors open, maybe for this main event, we've got doors open. You're gonna see we have these two, like doors open and item 5. Those are what we call title rows. They're a way to break up a show visually into different sections. So if you've got maybe you want to do it by breaks, by panel, by keynote, whatever it is, you can break up a show visually, which is really helpful for crew to kind of better understand. We all know, seen crazy Excel files. It's tough to read, tough to kind of comprehend. This just makes it visually really easy to kind of see. And then also for talent, if they're looking at it on a print off or on site, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the live components of this. It's just a little bit easier to kind of see there. And you can convert any row into a title row, either by clicking this little cogwheel, and then we've got to convert to a title row, or vice versa. We've also got a keyboard shortcut for it. You can convert them right back to regular rows. So If you ever want to come in here and kind of add different sections or segments, just really easy and kind of intuitive to do that. Moving to the right, we'll talk a little bit about the timing side of this. So I always like, after first time person uses it and tries it out, I always kind of like to ask what were some of the favorite things you guys liked, or what were the more important benefits. 9 times out of 10, customers love the auto time calculations and stuff in here baked in. As you know, timing out a show, specifically for corporate type of stuff, they have very hard end times, and they can get charged a lot if you go over. So they're very much timing out shows, making sure that things are going to end on time. So the way that timing works in here, you're going to see we have 2 clocks. We have a start time, and then we also have a duration. And for start time, you'll also notice we have this little flag right here. The flag just means that from that point in time, we are calculating forward. So if I come in here and I input for doors open, I just make this 30 minutes, and I'm just going to durations, make it 30 minutes. We auto calculate the next item to start at 8:30. Pretty simple. But as you input durations for the show, it's going to auto calculate everything automatically, and that could mean something a new presenter gets added to the rundown, or the order changes. So and actually, just let me jump over to a show with some already built out stuff that we don't have to sit here and have to watch me just create a show. So this is kind of just an example rundown. We kind of mock this off of a TEDx event we get used on a lot of TEDx events, and then more recently the big TED event in Vancouver, which is actually, I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit, one of our largest events. Had over 250 users in the software kind of collaborating. But the TED events and TEDx events are really kind of straightforward for kind of how we and why we design this software. So this is just kind of an example show. You can see we have a simple walk-in. We've got a live performance, which is 15 minutes. You can see we're just auto-calculating everything. You can see Drew Y, I guess is his last name. He's set to start at 1:45. The other thing that's really beneficial to this, if you have durations and things like that, is if you swap stuff around, we're going to auto-calculate the projected start times for all of those things instantly. So if I swap, you can see right here Amanda B starting at 1:30. If I just simply swap those two, now Drew's at 1:30. Everything's recalculated on kind of where it was supposed to be. If something gets changed last minute, like let's just say this performance gets trimmed by 10 minutes, so I come in here and just put 5 minutes. Everything's also getting recalculated through the entire show. So you're able to get a quick view of your projected end times, start times for different things, all really quickly. Or if something gets added in between, I can really quickly add a new element in between these two. And you can see based on that, I'm at 1:45, and I'll just add a duration of maybe like another 15 minutes. And you can see we just recalculate everything through it. So real quick and easy. Then the other one that I did mention is we do have a third clock we call preset time. It's used in a few different scenarios depending on the type of production, but the easiest way to do it is kind of like if you have a total runtime for a show, like 1 hour, 30 minutes, you can input that in there and show that visually. And then as you have durations, we're just going to, at that point in time, you can see we're at 1:15 or 1 hour, 15 minutes left. And as you kind of go through the show, we're just subtracting that. And if you go over, you're going to see we're flagging that in red right here. So now we're 6 minutes over that 1 hour, 30 minute period. So it's a good way to kind of set a goal time, and as you're building out a show or timing of a show, kind of keeping track of that. And in sports, they use it to manage breaks. So for example, like Super Bowl halftime, we got I think it's like a 20-minute or 15-minute break. They have content that they have to put in that 15-minute break. So they can set a goal time of 15 minutes, and as they input stuff into it, they can visually see, all right, they've got 2-minute window, or based on these things, we're 30 seconds over, we need to trim or cut out stuff. So really kind of easy to kind of do that, depending on the type of production that it is. Cool, any questions so far? Sorry, I'm just kind of flying through this stuff. I'm just going to kind of continue to just run through some of these kind of examples. I'm going to go back to a little less overwhelming kind of show, just just to keep it pretty simple. So that's a little bit about timing, and then the private notes. Like you guys had a feature where people can transfer over notes across different versions. It's kind of the same idea here in the way that each user, so this is a collaborative tool. Each individual user that's logged in has their own unique private notes column that is only seen by that person. So your L1, your A1, they get the rundown or they're looking at it visually. They can come in here and input their own notes into each element or each item. And if the version changes, if maybe I'm the producer or a stage manager or something and I need to come in here and tweak some changes or rearrange the order of presenters, my A1 that had notes input in the private notes column, those notes will transfer over with it. Our founder, he was a live video director for about 15 years before kind of starting the company. And he used to always say, that he would get that new version and then he'd have to transfer over his notes across multiple versions. He'd spend all night getting this paper document, perfect, and then he'd get another stack, on his desk the next day. And then you've got a choice. You either transfer over your notes across that new version, or do you go in and change, the little changes that, were given based on the previous one. So the private notes is just an easy way to input that stuff, and each crew member has that ability. I've also heard it used other scenarios, award shows. We get used on a good amount of award shows, and so for winners and of those awards, a producer or something like that could have that visually in the private notes. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of teleprompter style features in here, but being able to quickly take that, paste it, and move it over, or create a quick print off from those private notes, but keeping it in a safe environment to where no one else can kind of access it. Another thing you'll see is, and part of that too, if you're not using it, you can also just hide that column, because obviously if you're calling a show or you're an operator, you want to make sure you're seeing the most important information in front of you. And so with that, we also have each person can customize the entire view of the document to their own preference. So these documents can get really large, as you can imagine, especially with new technology, new video screens, new stuff. It just means more columns, more notes, more things to manage. The challenge there with a lot of paper is, I've seen it where they're taking the document and they're folding it over, to try to see just their cues next to the elements, or stage managers having, multiple print-offs, like all the different kind of scenarios there. So this just allows each person, so let's say I'm the lighting designer, I'm the L1, I don't care about video for whatever reason. I can actually just hide that column from my view altogether. That's only hiding it on my screen. Another operator can choose to kind of hide and reorder their own to their preference. I can also move the lighting column all the way over. I can, so just really kind of quick and easy. You can also set different widths for these columns depending on the type of content. I'm going to show you some examples of scripts and presenter notes. So for like longer scripts, you can make it a lot wider, but for audio cues, lighting cues, things that might be more smaller content, you can adjust the widths to kind of your personal preference. The columns right here, you can have as many columns as you want. Funny thing enough, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium that's the Super Bowl is at, when they first signed up, they had 32 columns of notes. Reason being they call it the halo board, which is in the middle of the arena, just an entire halo. And I think it's technically it's like 9 or 10 video boards kind of combined. So that's all different content they have to manage from that. But if I'm if I'm a lighting, operator, I don't need to see all 12 of those video columns. It's too much content. So the customization can be really helpful. I've also heard scenarios for live shows across multiple venues. So if you've got a Vegas show, one example, Google ran an Atmosphere event in Europe. They had 6 different venues, all running a live broadcast, and they ran it off of a single rundown because they did shots in each location, but it was all run off a single rundown. They had audio, video, lighting for each of the 6 locations within a rundown, within a show in here. but each location didn't need to see the other notes of those other ones, so they were able to just each one go in, hide those columns, personalize it to their own setting with one show caller actually, and I'm going to talk through the kind of show caller live settings of this in a minute, actually advancing through the rundown and everyone from the different venues able to follow along. So that's obviously like the far scale of that. That's not happening all the time, but just trying to talk through other scenarios of where some of that stuff can be helpful. Cool. Let's you can adding columns really easy. Click add column. As soon as that happens, everyone is kind of seeing it. I actually pulled in a demo user, so I'm logged in this just as myself, John Alexander, in Chrome, and I have an alternative user over here in Safari, and he's my demo guy. His name's Johnny Hollywood. That's what all the my colleagues in the office call me. But he's been invited into this event. He's a read-only permission, so that brings up a good point. We have 4 different permission structures that you can give each person invited in here. It's a read-only, contributor, admin, and show caller. Read-only, pretty safe bet. They can still customize the column layouts, structures, have their own personal notes. They can even have their own personal highlights for certain cues. So if there's something that's important to them, that's maybe more emphasis, they can add this little yellow highlight, and you'll see, from my view, I don't see that at all. Same thing with the private notes. The updates and edits is all in line. So this is very similar to working in Excel, where if I come in here and add something, we'll just say Jefferson, keynote. As soon as I tab out of that cell, you can see how quick in real time that is with the rest of the crew. So that in itself is really powerful, whether you're in a rehearsal with everybody, everyone has a laptop up, you're talking through things or making some changes, or you're on a conference call with a client and you're running through it with them. Being able to make those updates and tweaks right there with everybody kind of seeing it is really helpful. It also works the same way, if I rearrange something, if I move the Jeff Jefferson keynote to after that, you can just see visually how quick and easy those kind of changes are. Other things to any questions? Again, does this kind of make sense? Anybody create rundowns ever? Yeah, a few of you? Okay. Maybe eventually. So some other stuff, you've got the ability to do color coding. So that's another big thing in kind of corporate is, certain type of content, whether it's talent on stage is a certain color, or a video, or different things like that. You can quickly apply, we call them a global highlight, which just lets me highlight an entire queue across the board, and that is highlighted for everybody as well. So that's one thing there. You can also do per cell highlights. If I jump over to a example show, we've got even some more kind of flexibility there. So you can see you can have, see if I have any with, I don't have any here. You can even do it on a per character basis. So if I have some stuff right here, I can come in and bold, italicize, highlight certain content. In sports, PA scripts, oftentimes they'll emphasize certain keywords and things like that, or updates and changes that happen. Maybe if they're in the middle of a game and Brad Pitt's in section 105 and they want to shout him out, they can go in there right there in real time, make an update to a script, and the PA announcer is reading that right there. Or a birthday shout out, or some corporate things I've heard is doing Q&A or Twitter Q&A. Throwing that stuff kind of out those different places. So kind of on the personalization, we have a few different alternate views. So this view right here you can see is just your standard grid layout. We have a few different views I'm going to run you through and hopefully kind of get some ideas of where that can be leveraged depending on the type of production. So we have one which is called featured view, and featured view, what it does is it takes the content of the rundown, and we have a table on the left, which is all of your elements, item numbers, timing, stuff like that, and you can select one column to then output on the right hand side. So the easier example of that would be doing something like a script. So now visually I can have the rundown, the run of show on the left hand side, and then I can see the content of the selected element on the right. And you can see right here, I can drag and drop, increase font size to my preference. I can make edits in this right here in line if I need to, bold, italicized. This is a common view for VOG, could be for a PA announcer during a game. They can visually see this little paragraph icon. That's the representation that there's a script associated with that element. So I can quickly see, like, I don't have anything else coming up. This is the only one with the kind of script content. So that's kind of one view. The other view we have is actually I'm going to pause on the other view. I'm going to jump in, I'll walk you through the live component of this, and then the other views will kind of make a little bit more sense. So the live component of this, and you've kind of seen some ways you just quickly build out rundowns and use the timing and things like that. The other side of Shoflo is the live setting. You can absolutely still print and distribute. We are not trying to replace paper by any means. Totally understand there's a lot of requirements for paper print-offs. At any point in time, you can generate, we have a few different options. You can export back out to XLS. You can export out to CSV. We also have PDF. And it's really simple, easy to use. You select what type of version or what type of format, sorry. Then you can customize your print off based on your role, or if you're a producer providing this content to a crew member, you can also customize it. So if I don't care about the script, I can toggle that off. If I want to rearrange or images, if I want the presenter notes all the way to the left, I can reorder that and customize it. I can choose if I want to include my private notes or not. So a lot of customization, and then you can even kind of distribute paper size, portrait, landscape. We have a loose or compact. If you want to see more content on a page, you might go more compact. Maybe if you need more breaks, you like to kind of read it off different ways, you can kind of go with the loose route. So then export PDF, and like you've kind of always been doing it, or you have the ability to do those as well. So the live component that I'm going to walk you through is called show caller tracking. So I mentioned there is a permission called show caller. If you have the permission of show caller in this, you get an extra feature, which I'm going to, I'll just show, I'm going to pull this user over here. So again, this view is, think of it like, I don't know, an A1 or V1 or something like that on site. And over here on the right, this is the show caller. And actually, I'm in the wrong show. Let me jump over to just this one first. So I get this, when I'm hovering as a user, when I'm hovering over any of these elements, I get this track, blue track button. And what this allows me to do is I can track and press this blue button. What that does is it puts this blue icon right here in this element. That kind of representation that we are running this element right now, whether that's a rehearsal or whether that's during a show. And then what you'll also notice is in the top right we have a time of day, which is customizable based on where the location of the event is. You can change the time zone, all that type of stuff. And then we have an item runtime. Item runtime is a real-time clock based on the duration of the element. So as you track into an element, like item 0, relevant 0, we have 30-minute duration, so now we're kind of counting down based on that clock. I can make this clock full screen. A lot of people will output this to a DSM. I've seen them put it on an iPad on a podium for presenters. It's very versatile, and you can create a view like this, throw it on a DSM, and as the show caller or stage manager, as they're advancing element to element, that clock is changing dynamically based on the durations.
On different devices? On
different devices, that's correct. And every user, so if I come in here now, and you'll notice over here, as Johnny Hollywood, you can see I get a visual that John A is in this element. I don't have tracking on, so the crew have to opt in to follow along with the show caller. But once they do that, they only have to do that once on the front end. And then once they do that, they can either do it by clicking on the name, or they can select a show caller. I only have one. You can't have multiple show callers on an event. There's plenty of venues that are running live, and there'll be multiple breakouts with different show callers in each breakout. And so depending on your role, you may want to jump in, check out, see where another room is at in show, or something like that. So anyways, I'm just going to click track, and then you'll see it just jumps me, or it highlights that element right there, and then it also syncs up that item runtime clock, so I can see visually how much time is left in that given element. If you go over, this clock turns red and it starts counting up. So it's a great visual for either a presenter on stage. If they're over, gotta get them off stage. Maybe unless it's a CEO. But it just depends. And then as you advance to advance to the next element, there's two ways you can kind of call a show. The easiest is once you've started tracking, you just press spacebar and it advances directly into the next element. Shift spacebar will go back, or I can actually come down and I can track out of order. And you can see right here, we're pulling the user down in that. So this is obviously, we're just looking at a very simple one, not a lot of content. I'm going to jump in and show you visually what that can look like if you're viewing it from more of a built-out run of show.
Hey John, can I ask?
Yeah.
So you hit the space bar. Say something's
Yeah.
supposed to be 10 minutes, but somebody finished magically in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So you hit the space bar in 5 minutes. Does it recalculate everything?
Great question. Yeah, so we have an option. So if I click track, we're counting down from 30. If I just press spacebar, by default, we do not change the duration.
Okay.
And that's one of those things. Incorporate, your anytime you're adjusting timing can be really tricky. So you have the option. I can, if I hit this, because you can see, I'll just throw a couple filler duration. Let me stop tracking real quick. I'll throw in like 5 minutes, and we'll throw in like another 10 minutes. So based on this, we've got, wherever we're at 8:45. If I track into this, counting down from 30 minutes, I jump early. This doesn't change. I can, during a show, I can actually manually come in and adjust the duration to what it actually ran at, if I want to go that route. Or I can also, if I go back, I can actually jump. There's an extra keyboard shortcut. So rather than press spacebar, if you press Option spacebar, we're actually going to manually change the duration to what it actually ran at, and then adjust, as you'll see, all of the projected start times accordingly through the show.
That's cool.
So it's we've gotten the feedback, like there's some people that want that all the time. We're talking about adding an option to where you can enable it and then it'll automatically do that. But anytime you're changing timing on a rundown for a big event, it's we have to tread lightly, making it. So we've resorted to kind of keeping it default for that and making them have to press that extra kind of option key. But yeah, that's kind of how you would kind of manage that from that side.
And also, if they're longer than 10 minutes, same thing. If I hit option,
exactly.
it'll change it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they're longer than that, we're going to override it and add the time to it, so you'll see
Cool.
your kind of projected start times for everything.
Cool.
Cool. So that's any questions on that feature from anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
So if a time changes, you would just go back in and change it and then everything would adjust?
That's correct. And that can be the cool part about the show color tracking and the editing mode is it's really all done within a single view. And that's one of the biggest values in here is shows are, especially corporate shows, it's very reactionary. You've got a presenter that's supposed to be up for 10 minutes, they go for 15, you've got a lunch caterer, you've got all this stuff you've got to manage. And so these things are changing dynamically through a show. And so if I need to come in real quickly, even during a show, this guy's coming in, I can come in and adjust durations. I can come down here and I can move Jeff Jefferson, all while still tracking my current position for the rest of the crew. So you can make those updates and changes throughout the whole show.
Is there a recording? Because you have, what your original plan was.
Yeah.
And
Great question.
you would want to maintain what that was, but then it'd be nice to see,
Yep.
here's what actually happened, especially in an event, you probably do the same thing.
Exactly.
A year, multiple times a year.
Yep, totally. So we have while tracking, we have a utility column you can bring up, which is called a timestamp column. So the way that this works, if I pull this up, it's hidden by default for everybody. But if you bring this up, what this does is there's two ways you can use it. One, if I click this little kind of Wi-Fi looking icon and activate that blue, this will work in the background as you're advancing element to element. So again, if I click track, we're going to place a timestamp directly in this element. And you can see right here, 840. I can even has an option where I can add some notes. So if CEO, talk too long, or whatever, you can, quickly. Oops, I pressed the wrong button there. So yeah, as you're kind of calling the show, you're able to see the start times based on, because as I advance to the next element, again, we're placing a new timestamp directly in that. Alternatively, you can do it another way, which is if I'm not using tracking, or maybe I'm not using a live component, I can manually come in here at any moment and click this and place a timestamp directly in that. And then after a show, you can go to, oops, she's not over there, click this icon, and we have an export timestamp show report. Exports out as a CSV file, bring it into Excel. We're bringing in all of the content, so it's going to say the element name, the time, the projected start time, the actual time that it started, as well as any of the column notes that you brought in as well. So we actually bring in a lot, but we've gone the route of putting more information and then letting people decide what they want to kind of cut out. So that's kind of how that's used in that setting. Interesting enough, this feature gets used in sports for sponsorship reporting. So during a game, Coca-Cola, for example, maybe for the Super Bowl, they've got preset different sponsor elements that they paid for to get set or activated during the show. So the way that sports teams use it is they are using this in the background, and they generate that report as sponsorship fulfillment. So they actually can share it with one of their sponsor clients and say your Coke Zero fan cam element ran at this time 3 times through the show. So it's funny because we didn't immediately build this software for sports, but it's been one of the things I love about it is being able to find ways to build software to accommodate different industries. Because there's people that jump from different industry to different industry, whether it's broadcast into corporate, or corporate into broadcast, or theater into corporate, or even sports. So we're trying to create a tool that's versatile in the way that it kind of gets used across different scenarios. But that's a great question on kind of this. And this can also be used to show if things went bad, generating, maybe you don't show the client, but you keep it as more of an internal review for report, audio cut out, when the presenter was on stage, or things like that you can use internally to kind of monitor. Any other questions on any of this so far? How much time we got left?
15 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
I was just wondering
Yeah.
what devices this runs on.
Yeah, great question. So primarily this is a web-based application. We do have a native app for iPhone and iPad. This is heavily a building tool, and so I would still, anybody that's creating a rundown, I would push you to, you could use an iPad with a keyboard, but honestly it's going to be a little bit faster just with the way that the cells have data entry and things like that. But for crew, if I just need to see a schedule or something like that, then the iPhone app works really well as well, or the iPad app.
For running the show, do you experience people tending to then put paper in people's hands, or
That's a good question.
use your device? Or
Yeah, I
maybe
think
sports does one thing.
Yeah, so it's
Corporate
funny
does
thing enough.
another.
So it just depends on the crew, honestly, what the crew's comfortable with. There's people that are better adopting technology. There's others that aren't. Honestly, I've talked to high school football programs that are running it and entirely paperless. Dallas Cowboys Stadium, they print and give it out to everybody. So they use this heavily as a building tool, internal building. But they're the main producer. He's just comfortable, and the crew, and they just haven't made that switch. They've told us we want to eventually make the switch, but they just haven't got there yet. And so for crew, I think it's what I encourage people, if you get a lot of pushback from crew, which is going to get into kind of one of the views that I'll show, is a lot of teams will set up monitors backstage, Video Village, with this up, with the live, and people get more comfortable as they're interacting. Still give them all print off right before the show or whatever, but see how they kind of engage with it that way. We have another view, so if I come in here and track this Jeff Jefferson keynote, and I come over here, I turn tracking on, I'm in that. This person, or this, you could set up a Chromebook or something like that backstage. We also have something that we call a display view. Display view, and I don't have a lot of content in there, so that's why there's some blank stuff, but this is designed to be on a monitor backstage. It's automatically, and I'll try to make it like full screen, kind of full screen. It is automatically scrolling. It's only showing 4 elements. So like one example, I was on a show in Orlando, and they had this set up with an A1 off stage for talent to mic him up, and he had his, and you can pick one column that you want to put the content on. So if I have like audio, actually this was a blank show, so there's no content. That's a bad example. But you can see, you can each view can customize the different type of stuff. So this is a great view for kind of somebody in that scenario. I was on a big Dave Ramsey event. They do one big event, Entree Leadership Summit every year. It's like a $2 million budget, massive. It's like $4,000 for a ticket. Like, it's crazy. And he's telling us how to save money. But anyway, so they used it, and it's becoming a more kind of trending approach. They put this view in their presenter lounge, so they have all the food and all that for the talent getting ready to go up on stage, and they'll have this up next to a live shot of the stage, so they can see visually. If I'm coming up after Jeff Jefferson, I can see time of day, I can see a countdown clock of that projected time, and I can see when I'm coming up next. They could be, I've seen this in a video wall. I was in Vegas for the Vegas Golden Knights, and they have this view up on their video wall next to all of their other broadcasts, screens, stuff like that, so crew can just visually see where they're at in different sections and breaks and things like that. So a lot of different scenarios of where you can kind of follow along or see where you're at in a show. There's I've heard of people using just the iPhone app, whether it's, and I just need to quickly see, an in-game host just needs to quickly reference a note, some bullet points, just kind of pull it up in that scenario. So I think it just depends on the type of event, but we've tried to do a good job of making this very customizable to accomplish, depending on, I guess, the needs that are kind of for that.
Can we see one of the shows, that a run of show, and then export it and what that looks like?
Yeah, totally.
Because when I'm making an Excel document, I know what it's going to look like when I print it off.
Absolutely. So I'm going to hide this. We've got a lot of content in here, as you can kind of see. I've got some production notes. I've thrown in some presenter notes because I did want to show. We just released a teleprompter view meant for teleprompters or downstage monitors for talent to actually read, whether it's presenter notes or a full script. So from right here, I can come in here and click. We actually have a PDF export, a beta right now that it's just on because I was demoing it the other day. But as it is right now, we have this one, which just allows you to click it, come in here, decide what type of stuff. I'm gonna hide some of the script just because it's a lot of content. I'll keep the presenter notes, but we'll maybe just hide that one. And then just come through, click this stuff, click export PDF. It's gonna render in the background. It's bringing in, if you have images for talent, it's gonna render the images. It's gonna render all the font formatting as well as the highlighting and all of that into that. We're gonna timestamp it, page numbers, and the event name, show name, things like that. So should be done if I open that. Kind of see it visually right there. So that's kind of the example of what the PDF looks like. So you can see we brought in the images. We brought in you have the option to add either your own company logo or you can upload an event photo, an event for branding. Clients, all the corporate clients love that. The name of the show, you can see we got page numbers. We also have a timestamp and all of that right from there.
Yeah,
so it's
really
kind
nice.
of the PDF. We've tried to do our best to consolidate and shrink depending on the size and scale. But honestly, a lot of people just like this for printing, and because they don't want to format it in Excel, and it can be a nightmare. So
Yeah, that's always a nightmare.
I'll show you guys the new. So we're getting ready to release this. It's a new export modal where we're allowing for custom page breaks, which is one of our most, these guys appreciate it. You never get any. You're always gonna get feature requests. And so, yeah, we're doing kind of a new option where you actually can see the pre-rendered PDF in real time as you're making changes. You can see how it's kind of, how it's going to look visually, whether I'm hiding item numbers or going portrait landscape. We have a lot of international clients, and so we finally added A4 and that type of stuff for some of those international UK and Australia-based companies. And then we've added some other things. Print and grayscales was another option in there. So, anyways, this is just another some other things that are kind of coming down that line. Last couple things, and then I'll wrap. Is you have a question? Totally.
So, say you got like your layout of everything that you want, and then you do a dress rehearsal, and so you're doing your alt space bar, and getting the actual timestamps to show people where the time differences are.
Yep.
And then how do you reset that whole thing back to the original thing that you wanted?
So we've got a couple options there. One is I can really quickly, so I'm on my event dashboard page, I've got this blank show. I can right here create an exact copy of that show. So what I've guided people on is before rehearsal, you can come in here and just call this, rehearsal show, and use that as a way, and that way you can reference your other one. Or I can, on a show, I can actually hit this save button, and I can click save show. And what that does is that actually is saving it a timestamped version of that. So I can go to like my saved, and I can pull up, I can preview it, I can create an exact copy off of that. It's kind of a way to address, we still had some really large companies that wanted to do version-based stuff. And so, yeah, exactly. And so this is an option too, and you can even do it while working. If you just press Command S, it's gonna do a kind of just a timestamp version of it. So you can always go back, check what it was a week ago, day ago.
So it's best to create your standard version of what you want it to be, and then just make copies and run off those copies.
Yeah, honestly, but a lot of teams have moved away, if they've really adopted this, are moving away from versions, as this is the most current version at this moment in time. You can track changes and things like that inside of here. So this is the copy, so it's not going to show me those, but if I come in here, I can actually see like all of the real-time changes that were made, who made them, what time. We even do it on a per cell basis. So if I have like handheld number 4, and I come back and change this to handheld number 5, I can actually pull up a cell edit history. So I can see at 8:53 it was handheld number 4, at 8:53 I changed it to whatever. And any user can see who's making changes when and where, and then I can even revert back to handheld 4 if I want and override that. So we've tried to take a little bit of a different undo redo approach that I think is a little more fitting for production. But that's kind of a little bit about there. Does that answer your question though? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking of directly is if you had like a gala event that you did and you wanted to do an actual run where you printed what happened during the gala, and then versus what happened, I mean, what you plan to do.
Yeah, I would just do the copy and then just label them accordingly. That would be probably my suggestion. Last thing I'll show is the prompter. So this is a really new one. And we're actually coming out with an update to this already based on some feedback. But we have, from this, if I go to, we have prompter view. And what this is doing now is, again, same content, just displaying it differently. So we have our run of show right here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I can locate I'll go with presenter notes. I think I have decent content in this one. And then on the left-hand side, we've got a slide. Here's all of my elements, or the items in the whole show, item numbers and things like that. I can see based on that. This one is not too large. Maybe I'll go with more of like a formal script. That might be a little better. Let me find something with, there we go. So selecting the element or the item right here, and then on the right hand side, this is a little more of your form. If you guys ever worked with teleprompter software, this isn't like revolutionary in teleprompter software. We'll talk about why this is helpful, but a lot of the same stuff you're used to: text size, line height, customizable, scroll speed. We do have auto scrolling in here, which will work with any standard USB scroll wheels. Font weight, read arrows, if you want to give directional read arrows. In our new version, you can drag and drop this read arrow to customize it where you want. We also have mirror text if you're running it through, that output. And then how this works, or why this is helpful, is it's directly integrated into the rundown. So it's common in corporate land where you're building a rundown. If you're not using Shoflo, probably Excel, and then you're building another script file, and you're probably using it in text editor or in Word, and you're exporting it as a text file, and you're uploading that into the teleprompter location. The problem there is when something changes, now you've got to re-update in either one or both locations. If the presenter order changes, I got to change it in the rundown, I got to change it here. Or if last minute, which is always common, talent wants to change some of the presenter notes. They got to go in, change that stuff. All this can be done right here in line, all in real time. So I can either make edits in this view, or from that grid view, I could make an edit right there, and it's going to output into this in real time as well. So that's why we built it. We had people that were like hacking it, and like they were zooming into like the column, and so we really just like took a lot of that feedback and tried to create something that was helpful. The new version 2 has where you can have presenter notes, and uses your, I don't know if you guys ever used Perfect Queue. It's a device that talent can scroll their presentations, and it works with that as well, integrates with that. So as they advance to the next slide, their presenter notes will kind of change on that view. So this is meant to be outputted to either a teleprompter or a DSM on stage for something like presenter notes and things like that. I think that's really kind of what I wanted to go through. The only other thing, which is the link that I sent, was sent out, which is our guest pass. This is another great way to distribute this content in here. So if I go back out to my event, guest pass is, think of it like you put it like a Google Doc. Think of it like sharing a link to a Google Doc. And I can do that for either a per show rundown basis or for an entire event. So right in here in the event, I created this guest pass link, which I've toggled on, and then I can decide which content I want to be visible in this guest pass link. I can text, email this out to anybody. It brings in the branding of the event. Let's see if it's coming in. There you go. It brings in the branding of the event, the date, the name of the event, the date range, and then you can see this is just one-click access to the most current version of that document. So if you make a change in this, like you can see, I think I included the blank show when I first created it, and you can see this is pulling in the most current version of it. So it's a great way to distribute that weeks out in pre-production with a client without necessarily giving them access to Shoflo, but wanting to share the different stuff. So that could be, you want to share the production schedule. This is an example of TEDx, their production schedule they built out. And you could have links to different things. You can do links to full, renderings, that type of stuff. It's just another way to kind of help distribute, to eliminate that version, 6.5 and send out a mass email and just doing that constantly. That's really the kind of one of the main problems we're trying to solve, is that outdated workflow of just constant versions kind of getting sent around. So yeah, I think I'm up, but any last questions, anything like that? That I can kind of help answer for you guys?
How does the pricing work? Is it per user?
Good question. So we have a few different, obviously serving a lot of different industries. Pricing has been a battle. We have licenses based on, we have a per event model, which starts at $500 for an event. And that includes up to 25 users for the event. So, for you guys, potentially as, freelance stage managers, that would likely not be a cost that you would incur. That would probably be something that the production company that either is bringing you on, the end client. This often gets thrown in as a line item budget of the event. So that's one option, is more like the per event model. And we do have packages based on quantity of events. So we have like an up to 10, up to 25, up to 50. And then we do have a per user rate, which is more for like if just one person wants to just create stuff and not share, which is more as a creative tool, then they go that route as well, which is more in like the broadcast newsroom style. Obviously they're not on a per project, they're doing stuff every day, so they just want to kind of use it in that scenario. So.
And what is that approximately?
So what the rates are for our up to 10 events is $3,000 annually. So that brings the cost per event to about $350. And then I can pull up. Let's see if I have it in here. Actually, I don't know if I have that page. I can get that to you. The up to 20 events is 5,000, so that brings it down to like 250, I think. So you're going to get price breaks depending on kind of the quantity of events. The per user rate is around 2,000 annually, and that again just scales depending on how many. If you're buying it for 5 people, you're going to get a better price point. And then we have pricing a little bit different rates for sports. Just depends on the league and all that type of stuff. So I'm not the one that created the pricing, but there's a lot in there. But we've tried to be accommodating to the type of industry it is. That's been the biggest challenge of the tools, because different industries are using it to help price accordingly for a freelance stage manager, but also be able to scale for a corporate production company running 500 events a year. We have a level of support. We have this in-app chat, that any user can directly message us while they're using the software and ask questions. So if any of you guys get in a trial, you have questions, you can ping us there in the app. We can help answer questions, send you videos, articles, and all that type of stuff right from within that. So it's a good kind of support level as you're on site and have questions and things like that. So.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
That's cool.
But in straight plays,
Yeah.
there's a place for time tracking sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I've done a show where, if you went 1 minute longer, you're on platinum time.
Exactly.
And the fact of the matter is, did this on a 5.5-hour play. We had to negotiate a whole new deal and everything. And once the director was happy, we timed every minute of the show. And remarkably, and I didn't see this coming when we did it, you can tell which actor's taking his time. Because whenever that person is on, the template slows down.
That makes sense.
So even on a show that where
time
it's not a
passes,
money thing,
something's happening, right?
yes, even where a show it's not a money thing, but we opened 3 months ago and now the play's 4 minutes longer. Why is that? It's hard to tell.
That laugh or
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating.
I wouldn't have thought so, but when you mentioned that,
That's interesting.
Which, by the way, your program is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting us to come. This was fun.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, of course.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And then there is like
They do have that thing that shows the PDF that wasn't shrinking.
Oh, and so the $10 a month is about people stuff.
yeah, all of it.
Floated.
In there. This is super exciting for polyonder examples. I know I drew it around your side.
This is a meeting here.
But then